Hey everybody, Jay Widener, Reality Check. Hit like and subscribe and make the channel grow. We're back again, reading from the book, Ultimate to the End of Time. Came out around 2000. And now today we're going to get into the thick of it. We're going deep into the forest today. This is chapter 4, section 2, the Teli, the cycle, and heart, serpents in the sky. And I'll be showing you a lot of illustrations. In fact, I'm going to show you a couple before we begin, just so you'll understand what I'm talking about. That is the tree of life, and that's the tree of life. This is it broken into triples, and this is the full tree of life. All right. Tree of life is going to be very important to our alchemical understanding. The key concept is the tree of life. That's Kayam. That's described in the work of creation texts, such as the Sefer Yetzirah. Hang on, my eyes better. The tree of life is a diagram that pictures reality at the intersection of four great realms or levels of abstraction. A geometric pattern crystallizes within the intersection planes like a moire pattern in a hologramic projection. 10 localities, spheres, or sephiros are connected by 22 paths, processes, or states of becoming. The entire diagram was thought to describe the nature of creation, God's artistic technique, if you will. But its true importance to the sages was its application to the human condition. As God is supposed to have made man in his image and likeness, then man was thought to contain, in a microcosm, the entire tree of life. Some medieval Kabbalists used the concept in the Sefer Yetzirah to create an artificial form of life, as in the Golem legends of Prague and Warsaw. To the Western esotericists, this tree of life functioned much like the Kundalini diagrams of the Hindu mystics. By mapping the internal power centers and the projecting outwards and aligning them with the forces of nature, the magicians sought to reenact the processes of creation and to become like God, a co-creator of the universe. I have to clean my glasses, I think. All right. The Sephira and the paths are arranged in a few basic patterns. The top three localities, Kether, Hokmah, and Bina, crown, wisdom, and understanding, create a triangle motif that is then inverted and projected downward through the pattern. The first inverted triangle, Hesad, Gabora, and Tippereth, mercy, strength, and beauty, is repeated by the third and last triangle, Netzach, Had, and Yesod, victory, splendor, and foundation. The whole pattern is then resolved by and enfolded into the last Sephirah, Malkuth, or kingdom. Each of these triangular patterns represents one of the realms or levels of abstraction. The repetition of the pattern also creates three columns or pillars on the tree. Facing the tree, the three columns are mercy, transformation, that is the center column that connects Malkuth with Kether, heaven to earth, and severity. These repetitions of three can also be seen as the three persons of the Trinity, the laws of three, or thesis, antithesis, and synthesis to the modern philosopher. And I mean, we're getting in the thick of it. This is probably the place where a lot of people quit reading this book because it's very abstract. Also having trouble reading today. The Ba here adds an important point to this discussion by suggesting that the portions of the celestial sphere can be equated with the spheres of each Sephiroth or globe on the tree of life. In verses 179 and 180 of the Bahir, we learn that our physical world is like a mustard seed in a ring. In a sphere around the ring are the 10 spheres and their animating statements, which verse 180 locates in space around a center point, supposedly the mustard seed. This, of course, suggests the parable of the mustard seed found in Matthew 13, 32 to 33, and Mark 4, 30 to 32. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and planted in his field. Though it was the smallest of seeds, yet when it grows, it becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and perch on its branches. In Matthew, Jesus goes on to relate the parable of the yeast, a metaphor for the kingdom of heaven and its transformative force that spreads throughout all matter. I really apologize for I'm having trouble reading today for some reason. Matthew ends the section with another quote from 2nd Isaiah explaining why Jesus spoke in parables. Quote, I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter things hidden since the creation of the world. Unquote. Verses 62, 95, and 106 of the Bahir describe the tree which grows from this mustard seed in terms of the ancient ideas later written down in the Sefer Yetzirath and the Sefer Zohar, two books that are part of the Hebrew Kabbalistic tradition. We must remember that works such as the Bahir were written for the initiated few who could understand its complex metaphors. If we take it literally, we are sure to misunderstand its meanings. Verses 95 and 96 of the Bahir make this quite apparent. Attributed to Rabbi Amorai, the spokesman for the traditional viewpoint, verse 95 reveals the structure of the cube of space and the jewel of the celestial tree within it. This structure is based on the ancient concepts of the axis, the sphere, and the heart. If we know the secret, then this is one of the most straightforward verses in the Bahir. Without the key, however, it is merely an incomprehensible string of numbers. The very secret of alchemy lies in these symbolic images, the axis, the sphere, and the heart, which are an ancient, perhaps even pre-catastrophic description of astronomy. The first three verses of the 6th chapter of Rabbi Akiva's Sefer Yetzirath supplies the key to the astronomical alchemy, although in truly oblique fashion. The first verse informs us that as proof of the existence of the tree of life, the 12, the 7, and the 3, quote, he sets them in the Teli, the cycle, and the heart, unquote. The secret lies in the mysterious word Teli. It occurs in neither the Torah nor the Talmud, although it is used in the Bahir. There is considerable dispute among scholars as to its precise meaning. The only similar word in the Bible is a single reference to some kind of weapon in Genesis, apparently from the root of the word tala, or to hang. It must have been some kind of bolo or weight suspended on a rope for throwing. This suggests that the Bahir is talking about the celestial axis around which the heavens rotate. This means that the celestial axis is a kind of imaginary string from which the celestial globe hangs. I'll be showing you a lot of illustrations also as we get going here. But what is a string connected to? An ancient midrash, quote, the prayers of Rabbi in the beginning tells us that it hangs by a thread from the fin of the Leviathan. The ancient serpent can be nothing other than the constellation of Draco, the pole serpent mentioned in Job 26:13. Quote, by his spirit the heavens were calmed, his hand pierced the pole serpent, unquote. And in 2nd Isaiah, quote, on that day, the day of judgment, with his great sharp sword, God will visit and overcome the Leviathan, the pole serpent, and the Leviathan the coiled serpent, and he will kill the dragon of the sea, unquote. It is important to note that the three such dragons are mentioned here. To understand this, we must look up to the stars. We can all find the pole star Polaris in the tail of Ursa Minor, the little bear. This marks our north celestial pole directly above the north pole of our planet. There is another pole in the sky, however. This is the pole of the solar eclipse, the path of the sun through the constellations. The Earth is tilted at 23.5 degrees away from the ecliptic. This tilt causes the celestial pole above our planetary pole to describe a great circle in the sky over long periods of time. In 4500 BCE, Thuban, a star in the tail of Draco, marked the celestial pole. The pole has now moved over time and shifted to Polaris. The ecliptic pole, however, does not change, since the path of the sun through the sky never changes. Although this point, which has no star visible to the naked eye to mark it, the constellation of Draco, the great dragon, spirals through all of the 12 zodiacal signs. The stars appear to hang Tala from it. Draco therefore becomes the Teli, which the Sefer Yetzirath in chapter 6-3 tells us is, quote, over the universe, like a king over his throne, unquote. This is perhaps an echo of an ancient form of worship, that of the God Most High, identified with Baal, that predated the arrival of the Hebrews in Palestine. It would be the Phoenicians. It is also serpent of the garden, climbing its way up to the tree of life, of the tree of knowledge. No, sorry. It is also the serpent of the garden, climbing its way up the tree of knowledge of good and evil, that the brazen serpent used by Moses in the wilderness, and even Hermes' caduceus staff. Ophites, who worship the serpent in the Garden of Eden for giving us the gift of knowledge, which provided us an escape from the demiurge, formulated the image of a snake spiraling around an egg. In simple terms, this is the serpent of Draco, coiled around the eclipse made by the celestial pole. The Teli here would be the axis of the ecliptic poles through the head and tail of the dragon and the center of the celestial sphere. This is the first dragon, the pole serpent. There are, however, two other ways to interpret the dragon axis of the Teli. Hebrew astronomers use the term Teli to denote the inclination of the orbit of a planet from the ecliptic. In the case of the moon, this allows one to track eclipses. Eclipses only occur when the sun and moon arrive at the nodes, or the head and tail of the dragon, to the ancient astronomers at the same time. Solar eclipses were seen as occasions where the dragon caught and swallowed the sun for a period of time. The concept of ascending and descending nodes, the head and tail of the dragon or Teli, was also used with other planets. The major nodes for the sun are the vernal and autumnal equinoxes. This is the point where the celestial equator crosses the ecliptic. This is the second dragon, the coiled serpent. Then there's still another way to look at the concept of the Teli. If we think of the Milky Way as the Leviathan because of the way that it snakes across the night sky through the year, then the Teli, or our third dragon axis, becomes the galactic axis, running through the ecliptic from Sagittarius Scorpio to Gemini Taurus. This is the third and final dragon. Like the ecliptic axis, the galactic axis is constant and unmoving. Within these pillars or perpendicular axis lies the coiled dragon of the equinox, spinning slowly backwards through time, 1 degree of arc every 72 years. Knowledge of this backward march of the precession caused by the Earth's tilt constituted the great secret of many ancient cultures, as different as Greece and the New World Maya of Mexico. A Talmudic example makes this even clearer. Quote, the storm wind hangs Tala between the arms of God like an amulet, unquote. The hanging is, of course, the Teli. The storm wind is the slowly backward turning spiral of the equinoxes and a good metaphor for the mystical experience itself. The arm of the universe are the unmoving Teli, the ecliptic and galactic axis, from which the initiatory spiral of the equinoxes is suspended like an amulet. It is impossible to underestimate the value of the knowledge of one's location in space and in time. It is impossible to underestimate the value of the knowledge of one's location in space and in time that these three accesses provided. It would be also seem as if the accesses were creating an address for the planet Earth, the purpose of which remains a mystery. The Bahir in verse 106 announces that the Teli is nothing but, quote, the likeness between the Blessed Holy One, or quote unquote, or the face of God. Verse 96 of the Bahir addresses key alchemical symbols and may in fact be our earliest mention of the Philosopher's Stone. It begins, quote, what is the earth from which the heavens were created? Is it the throne of the Blessed Holy One? Is it the precious stone and the seed of wisdom? Unquote. The verse continues to suggest the spiritual value of the color blue, the traditional color of kingship, by associating the sea with the sky and the sky with the higher light coming from the throne of creation. From the Bahir, we learn that the tree of life is actually the precious stone, whose facets are projected onto the celestial sphere, which is part of the continuous flow of the sea of wisdom. John's revelation is a version of this, and with the tree of life on the banks of the flowing river, deep inside New Jerusalem's cube of space. We can also see that all this weird symbolism actually has a context and a meaning and is grounded in firm reality. So what happened to the tree of knowledge? Is it banished from the perfected schema? The Bahir suggests in many subtle references that the tree of knowledge formed itself around the axis of the celestial pole, whose Teli or dragon axis would be the backward spiraling axis of the precession of the equinoxes. The north celestial pole, as it circles around the fixed point of the ecliptic pole, first leans in towards the angle of the galactic axis, that is towards the center of the galaxy. It then moves away in a large precessional cycle. The fall occurs when the tree is tilted away from the galactic axis. The resurrection and the redemption, the arrival of the kingdom of heaven, happens when the tree tilts towards the galactic axis. The four great ages then are the tilting in towards the center of the galaxy, which translates into the golden and silver ages, and the tilting away from the center of the galaxy, which brings in the bronze and the current iron age. The mystical experience of the Galgal or cycle of the tree of knowledge is the whirlwind or the Sufa in our Talmudic reference. The Galgal is also spoken of in the Bahir as a womb. This is a cycle of time in which the future is born. All of time happens within the sphere defined by the Teli. The Bahir also tells us that the Teli is revealed in the heart of heaven. This is both our human, personal, spiritual center of the heart of man and the heart of the center of our own Milky Way galaxy. Together they pulsate in harmonic fractals of the same wave. All right. In some ways, I apologize for that complexity. I want to show you, here's Draco in all 12 signs of the zodiac. Here is, you can see that as we approach the future, when this book was written, it could be just about the time this book was written, we went into a perfect cross. So 2,000 years ago, the axis towards the center of the galaxy was here 700 years ago, and today it forms the perfect cross. The fractal nature, what the Mayans understood so well, is that we our lives work in harmonics. So you're in the womb for 260 days. And that's exactly how many days are in a Mayan calendar. 26 is the root of 260, and that is, according to the Kabbalah, is the number for God. So 26 is the number of God. 260 is the number of days for being in the womb, and also the number of days in the Mayan calendar. And then another harmonic of that is 26,000, and it takes 26,000 years for that cycle to go all the way around. So it's 6,500 years moving into the towards the center of the galaxy, which is the golden age, and then 6,500 years again moving to the further away from it, and that becomes the silver age. And then when we're farthest away and tilting away from it, it's the bronze, and then the iron age. And according to the Mayan calendar, we passed that point on December 21st, 2012. So we entered into the Great Cross in 1998, which, by the way, is 666 times 3. We left the cross, the giant cross, on December 21st, 2012. And so people say, well, a lot of people are going, oh, there's going to be this gigantic change in 2012. And I think David Wilcock was running around telling everyone that we're all going to become psychic, and we're going to have, spontaneous psychedelic experiences. And of course, none of that happened, because it wasn't that kind of change. The change is gradual. So it was a gradual change. And the changes were quite profound from 1998 to 2012. Technologically, we had VHSs in 1998, and by 2012 we had streaming. We'd gone all the way through DVDs, and now we didn't need those anymore, and we were off to streaming. And a lot of things happened, but the biggest and most profound things that happened were the spiritual nature, where the old rigid dogmas began to disappear, and we began to accept other forms of spirituality and thinking. And I was, eyewitness to the whole thing. And in 1998, I was a video director at Gaiam, and we faced all sorts of people that didn't want us to produce certain kinds of films. And then when I got back to Gaia, I'd left, of course, in 2000, and I came back in 2012, right in time for all of this. All of a sudden, I could make films about anything. And that's how Gaia, the TV network, was born, because there had been a fundamental shift between 1998, when I was getting resistance, corporate resistance to ideas, to 2012, when it just seemed like, yeah, of course we're going to do that. And that's how I noted it. And the accelerating, so what I'm saying is that we're now tilting into a golden age, and but it's not going to be pretty. Terence McKenna used to tell me that enlightenment is like you're walking down the hallway in a hospital, and you hear a woman screaming, and then you open the door to see what's going on, and there's blood everywhere, and nurses and doctors running around crazy, and it looks like she's dying, but actually she's just given birth. And so we can see something and think that it's one thing, and actually it's something else. So that's what I believe is going on. Now we're going to get into the weeds here a little bit. The next 2 or 3 of these chapters on astronomy are going to be lengthy and deep. And so basically what we're just saying is that we have a triangulated a way to find planet Earth in outer space. You have the Draco, which is up here, spinning up around, and then the Earth inscribes a circle through the precession of the equinoxes, because the Earth is tilted. And so it describes a circle in the sky, which follows Draco perfectly. And then, of course, we have the center of the galaxy, which is, by the way, I think starting to rise right now in the south. Should be starting to rise. Scorpio, no, Sagittarius rises first and Scorpio second. And if you look right between Sagittarius and Scorpio around 9:30 at night, 9:30 to midnight or so, you will see the center of the galaxy. It's this really milky thing that sits between Sagittarius and Scorpio. And Sagittarius is shooting his arrow right into the center of the galaxy. And Scorpio is also using his tail to touch the center of the galaxy. So you might want to go out at night and see that, especially with the planetary alignments that are going on right now. So I know it's complicated, but so what we're saying is that they would use these three access points, these three dragons, to find out where they were in space and in time. And then they would then proceed to use that knowledge to do their meditations and open their heart up. And so there's this like relationship between the beating of our heart and the pulsating of the center of the galaxy. They're pulsating together every time which is about 72 beats a minute, by the way. Also, if you it's 26,000 years in the precession, but we move 1 degree every 72 years. In 72 years, it's just about equals 26,000 days. So again, that harmonic of 260, 26,000, 26, all comes into harmony. We begin to see that our conception is geared to these cycles. Our heartbeat is geared to these cycles. And then we know from Randall Carlson's great work that a lot of the big fires that occur around the world happen with the Draco meteor shower that happens around the first week of October every year. And what it appears that all the meteors are coming out of Draco, which is the dragon, right? And the dragon spits out fire. And these things have flammable material in them. And when they hit the ground, especially if it's dry out and has been raining, they cause spontaneous fires. And he's done, I'm going to have him on soon to talk about this because it's seriously important. So Draco is one of the more important constellations that is not really talked about because it's not part of the zodiac. All right. I'm Jay Widener. This has been Reality Check. I hope you got some of what I was trying to tell you. And I really do appreciate you watching. And we'll be back next week for another complicated chapter. But then after this, it gets easier to follow once we get past this loop that we're going through right now. And that's it. Thanks for watching.